The tension didn't start with a speech. It started with a shift, subtle but sharp, like the moment before a storm when the air feels heavier and nobody can quite explain why. Screens lit up, analysts leaned forward, and somewhere behind closed doors, a message had already been delivered. Comply, or watch the pressure rise in ways you won't be able to control. This wasn't just diplomacy, it was a countdown disguised as conversation, and every second carried weight. If you're watching this right now, it's because something about that headline pulled you in. Maybe it was the number, maybe it was the urgency, or maybe it was that quiet feeling that something bigger is unfolding behind the scenes. Stay with me, because what you're about to understand isn't just politics. It's the kind of strategy that can shape economies, shift alliances, and quietly affect your everyday life without you even realizing it. Now, imagine the situation from inside the room. No cameras, no microphones, just decision-makers surrounded by maps, intelligence reports, and energy forecasts glowing on massive screens. The focus isn't just on what is being said, but on what is being implied. A temporary ceasefire is on the table, but it comes with a condition that carries enormous weight: reopen a critical global route or risk escalating consequences that extend far beyond regional borders. At first glance, it sounds straightforward: a pause in conflict, a chance to stabilize things, a window for negotiation. But look closer, and you realize it's not really a pause at all. It's leverage, the kind of leverage that forces one side to act while the other watches carefully, measuring every response, every delay, every sign of hesitation. Because in situations like this, hesitation is not neutral, it's information. While public statements remain cautious, almost rehearsed, the reality behind them is far more intense. Officials talk about possible meetings, potential discussions, and ongoing communication, but nothing is confirmed. And that uncertainty is not accidental. It's part of the design. When nothing is finalized, everything remains in motion, and that constant motion keeps pressure alive. Meanwhile, conversations expand beyond a single issue. A scheduled meeting with key international figures adds another layer to the situation. On the surface, it's about cooperation, about alignment, about shared goals. But underneath, there's frustration, a sense that some allies have stepped forward, while others have stayed back, offering words instead of action. And that imbalance doesn't just create tension, it reshapes relationships. Think about that for a moment. In times of conflict, support is measured not by statements, but by contribution. When some partners actively engage while others remain distant, it sends a message, clear and unmistakable. And that message doesn't disappear after the crisis ends. It lingers, influencing future decisions, future alliances, and future trust. Now, shift your focus back to the core issue, the negotiation itself. On one side, there's a position built on strength, reinforced by recent developments that have significantly weakened the opposing structure. On the other side, there's resistance, shaped by long-standing objectives and deeply rooted strategies. The gap between these positions is not small, it's massive, almost impossible to bridge without major concessions. And that's where things become complicated, because concessions aren't just political decisions, they're survival decisions. Every demand carries implications, not just for policy, but for control, influence, and long-term stability. Agreeing to certain terms could reshape an entire system, while rejecting them could invite consequences that are even more severe. This is not a simple negotiation. It's a high-stakes balancing act where every move is calculated and every outcome carries risk. And within that balance, there's a deeper question that keeps surfacing. Is genuine compromise even possible? From one perspective, the answer seems unlikely. The differences are too significant, the goals too far apart. One side wants control reduced, capabilities limited, and influence contained. The other side sees those demands as threats to its very existence. When the stakes reach that level, agreement becomes more than difficult. It becomes uncertain. But uncertainty doesn't mean inactivity. Behind the scenes, communication continues. Messages are sent, signals are interpreted, and new possibilities are explored. Even when public statements suggest doubt, private discussions can tell a different story, because in situations like this, what is said openly is only a fraction of what is actually happening. There are also signs, subtle but important, that indicate a shift in behavior, new figures stepping into positions of influence, new channels of communication opening, and new motivations emerging. When leadership changes, even slightly, it can create opportunities that didn't exist before. Not guaranteed solutions, but openings that can be explored. Still, skepticism remains. There is a long history of resistance, of standing firm regardless of pressure, and that history shapes expectations. It creates a mindset where trust is limited and caution is constant. Even when dialogue happens, it is approached carefully, with the understanding that intentions may not always align with actions. At the same time, the reality on the ground cannot be ignored. The cost of continued conflict is rising, not just in terms of resources, but in terms of stability. Losses accumulate, pressure builds, and the margin for error becomes smaller with each passing day. In that environment, even the most rigid positions can begin to shift, not out of willingness, but out of necessity. And that brings us to the critical moment, the decision point. Accept certain terms and move towards a controlled outcome, or reject them and face an unpredictable escalation. Neither option is easy. Both carry consequences, and the weight of that choice extends far beyond the immediate situation. Because this isn't just about one agreement or one region, it's about influence, power, and the future direction of global dynamics. The outcome will send a message, not just to those directly involved, but to observers around the world. It will define expectations, shape strategies, and influence decisions in ways that may not be immediately visible. For the average person, all of this might feel distant, abstract, something that exists in headlines and discussions, but doesn't directly connect to daily life. But the truth is, it does connect, through energy prices, through economic shifts, through the ripple effects that travel quietly but consistently across borders. A decision made in a closed room can eventually show up at a fuel station, in a grocery bill, in the cost of living that people experience every day. That's the hidden link, the invisible thread that ties global strategy to personal reality. And once you see it, you start to understand why these moments matter so much. So as the clock continues to move and the situation unfolds, remember, this is not just a negotiation. It's a carefully constructed moment of pressure, timing, and strategy. Every statement, every delay, every signal is part of a larger picture that is still coming into focus. And if you want to stay ahead of these shifts, to understand not just what is happening, but why it matters, make sure you're subscribed and paying attention, because the next move could change everything faster than anyone expects.